Welcome back to Channel for Centuries. We have misunderstood one of the most powerful statements ever spoken. When the Master said, "You are the salt of the earth," he was not giving you a compliment or a moral instruction. He was revealing a spiritual law about your true nature that, when understood correctly, transforms everything in your experience. Most religious teachings have turned this into a burden, telling you that you must become salt through good works, sacrifice, or spiritual striving. But Joel Goldsmith discovered something revolutionary in his deep meditative work. This statement is not about what you should do or become. It is a declaration of what you already are. The word salt in ancient mystical understanding represents that which preserves, purifies, and gives flavor to life itself. You are not becoming this. You are not working toward this. You are this right now in this very moment. This is not poetry or metaphor. This is the absolute truth of your spiritual identity that changes your entire relationship with healing, abundance, and divine grace. Let me share what happened when I truly grasped this principle. In my own journey with Joel's teachings, I had spent years trying to become more spiritual, more worthy, more pure. I was exhausting myself in spiritual practices, believing I needed to earn my place as salt. Then one morning during meditation, it struck me with absolute clarity. I was not trying to become salt. I already was the salt. My true spiritual nature had never changed, never diminished, never needed improvement. The moment I stopped trying to achieve what I already possessed, everything shifted. Within 3 weeks, a chronic health condition that had plagued me for years simply dissolved without medical intervention. This was not magic or wishful thinking. This was the natural result of recognizing my true spiritual identity. When you know yourself as the salt of the earth, as that which purifies and preserves, your consciousness automatically begins to dissolve the false beliefs that created disease, lack, and limitation in your experience. The healing power was never outside you. Here is where Joel Goldsmith's interpretation becomes radically different from traditional religion. He taught that you are not salt because of your human goodness or moral behavior. You are salt because of your spiritual identity, as the very presence of God expressing in individual form. This is not blasphemy. This is the deepest truth of mystical Christianity. When you realize you are the salt, you stop begging God for things. You stop trying to manipulate spiritual laws. You stop treating yourself as a limited human hoping to get divine attention. Instead, you rest in the awareness that the infinite divine presence is already your true nature, and everything that belongs to that presence already belongs to you. This is not about ego or human pride. Your human self is not salt but the Christ consciousness within you, the I am presence that existed before your body was born and will exist after it dissolves. That eternal spiritual selfhood is the salt of the earth. When you live from this awareness, limitation becomes impossible because salt cannot be corrupted or depleted. The practical application of this principle is where transformation becomes tangible in your daily life. Every morning before you face your challenges, you return to this truth. You do not affirm it as something you hope to become. You recognize it as the permanent reality of your being. I am the salt of the earth, not through achievement, but through divine creation. When a financial problem appears, you do not panic or scheme. You remember that salt preserves and sustains. Your spiritual nature already contains the substance of divine abundance, and it cannot be diminished by external circumstances. You rest in this awareness until the outer experience aligns with the inner truth. This may take days or weeks, but the shift is inevitable. When illness threatens, you do not fight the disease or beg for healing. You recognize that salt purifies and cleanses. Your true spiritual identity is incorruptible. And as you rest in this awareness, the body naturally reflects the perfection of your spiritual selfhood. This is not denial of the human experience. This is the recognition of a deeper reality that transforms the human experience from within. I witnessed this principle transform a woman named Margaret, who had been diagnosed with an aggressive autoimmune condition. Her doctors gave her a grim prognosis and prescribed medications with severe side effects. She came to our study group desperate and terrified, asking how to pray for healing. I shared this interpretation of being the salt of the earth. At first, she struggled with the concept. How could she be salt when her body was attacking itself? But I reminded her that her body was not her true identity. Her spiritual selfhood, the Christ presence within her, had never been sick and could never be sick. For 6 weeks, she practiced resting in this awareness each morning and evening. She stopped fighting her condition and stopped begging God to fix her. Instead, she simply recognized her true nature as the salt, that which is incorruptible and pure. By the 8th week, her symptoms began to diminish. By the 4th month, her blood tests showed no markers of disease. Her doctors called it spontaneous remission, but Margaret knew the truth. She had discovered her real identity. Another profound example came from Thomas, a businessman facing bankruptcy after his partner embezzled funds and disappeared. He lost his company, his savings, and faced potential legal consequences for debts he did not create. When he found Joel Goldsmith's work, he was on the edge of complete despair and had lost all hope for his future. I introduced him to this principle of being salt. Salt preserves, sustains, and maintains the integrity of whatever it touches. His spiritual nature was not bankrupt regardless of his bank account. His true identity as the presence of divine abundance could not be stolen or diminished. For 2 months, he practiced this awareness while taking practical steps to rebuild. The transformation was gradual but unmistakable. New opportunities appeared. People he had never met offered assistance. Within 8 months, he had not only recovered financially but created a more successful venture than before. He often said that losing everything externally was necessary for him to discover the inexhaustible supply within his own spiritual consciousness. A third story involves Rachel, a single mother who felt worthless and depleted after a painful divorce. She believed she had failed as a wife, doubted her ability to raise her children alone, and saw herself as damaged and unlovable. Traditional therapy helped somewhat, but she still carried a deep sense of spiritual inadequacy. When she encountered this teaching about being salt, something awakened in her. She realized that her worth was not determined by her marriage, her circumstances, or anyone's opinion of her. Her true spiritual identity as salt meant she had always possessed the power to preserve, nurture, and bring flavor to life regardless of external validation. She practiced this awareness daily, especially when feelings of failure arose. Within months, her entire demeanor changed. Her children noticed she was more peaceful and confident. New friendships formed naturally. Eventually, she started a support group for divorced women, helping others discover their spiritual identity beyond their circumstances. She became living proof that you cannot lose what you eternally are. These are not isolated miracles or special cases. These are natural results of recognizing your true spiritual identity as the salt of the earth. When you stop trying to become what you already are, when you rest in the awareness of your divine nature, transformation is inevitable. The power is not in the technique, but in the truth itself that sets you free. If these transformation stories inspire you to discover your own spiritual identity, like this video to help others find these life-changing teachings. Subscribe for more Joel Goldsmith wisdom each week and comment sharing which story resonated most deeply with your heart and why. Now let me share the complementary practice that deepens your experience of being salt. Joel Goldsmith taught that silence is the language of spiritual realization. You cannot grasp this truth through mental effort or intellectual analysis. You must enter the silence where your true identity reveals itself beyond words and concepts. Each day set aside at least 15 minutes to sit in complete stillness. Not to pray, not to ask for anything, not to visualize or affirm. Simply be silent and receptive. In this silence, you are not trying to become salt. You are allowing the truth of what you already are to rise into your conscious awareness. This is not meditation technique. This is recognition. As you practice this sacred silence, you may feel a deep peace that has no external cause. You may sense a presence within you that is untouched by your circumstances. This is not imagination. This is your spiritual identity making itself known to your human awareness. The more you rest here, the more your entire life begins to reflect this inner reality of wholeness and completion. Another powerful practice is what Joel called spiritual discernment. Throughout your day, you will encounter appearances that contradict your identity as salt. Illness appears, lack appears, conflict appears. Traditional religion teaches you to fight these appearances or pray them away. But Joel revealed a different approach that actually works. When a negative appearance presents itself, you do not deny it exists on the human level, but you refuse to accept it as the ultimate reality. You pause and remember your true identity. I am the salt of the earth. My spiritual nature is incorruptible, pure, and complete. This appearance has no power over what I truly am. You rest in this awareness without force or struggle. This is not positive thinking or affirmation. This is discernment between the temporary human appearance and the eternal spiritual reality. As you practice this consistently, you will notice that the appearances begin to lose their power over you. What once would have triggered fear or panic now barely disturbs your peace. This inner stability is the foundation from which true transformation emerges. Joel also taught the practice of recognizing everyone else as salt. This is crucial because you cannot truly know yourself as salt while seeing others as corrupt, limited, or evil. Your consciousness is one indivisible whole. If you see separation, lack, or disease in another, you reinforce those beliefs in your own experience, even if you consciously deny them. When you encounter someone difficult or see suffering in another person, practice this recognition silently. That person is also the salt of the earth. Their true spiritual identity is as perfect and complete as my own. What I perceive as their problem or limitation is only a temporary appearance obscuring their eternal nature. As I recognize their spiritual perfection, I strengthen my own realization. This practice transforms relationships in ways that seem miraculous. People who were hostile become friendly. Situations that seemed impossible to resolve suddenly shift. This is not manipulation or wishful thinking. This is the natural result of consciousness recognizing its own wholeness reflected in every individual. When you see salt in others, you confirm it in yourself, and both experiences transform simultaneously. The final complementary practice is what Joel called living by grace. When you know yourself as salt, you stop living by human effort, willpower, or strategic planning. You recognize that the infinite intelligence within your spiritual nature already knows the perfect unfoldment of every situation. Your role is not to make things happen, but to allow them to happen through your recognition of truth. This does not mean you become passive or stop taking action. It means your actions flow from inner guidance rather than fear or ambition. You listen in the silence for the next step, and then you take it with confidence, knowing that salt cannot lose its savor. Your spiritual identity ensures that every genuine impulse from within will bear fruit in your external experience. As you practice living by grace, you will discover a new rhythm to your life. Things that once required struggle now unfold with ease. Doors open that you never knew existed. Resources appear exactly when needed. This is not luck or coincidence. This is the natural law of spiritual identity expressing itself when you stop blocking it with human effort and limitation. Now I must address the challenges you will face in living this truth, because realistic expectations are essential for lasting transformation. The first major obstacle is the voice of doubt that will arise repeatedly, especially in the beginning. Your rational mind will say this is too good to be true, that you are deceiving yourself, that your circumstances prove you are not salt. This doubt is not your enemy. It is simply the human consciousness that has been conditioned by generations of limitation belief. When doubt arises, do not fight it or feel guilty about it. Simply acknowledge it without giving it power. The doubt is real on the human level, but it is not the ultimate truth. Return gently to your spiritual identity without making the doubt wrong. Expect this doubt to appear for weeks or even months as you practice. Joel himself struggled with doubt in his early years of spiritual awakening. The key is not to eliminate doubt, but to stop letting it dictate your identity. You are salt even when you doubt it. Your spiritual nature does not depend on your human certainty. This understanding allows you to progress even while doubt persists. The second challenge is what Joel called the time lag between realization and demonstration. You may grasp this truth of being salt intellectually and even feel it spiritually in moments of meditation, yet your circumstances may not change immediately. This lag can be deeply discouraging and cause many seekers to abandon the path before transformation fully manifests. Understand that consciousness is cause and circumstance is effect. There is always a period, sometimes days, sometimes months, between the shift in consciousness and the visible change in conditions. This is not a flaw in the principle. This is the natural unfolding of spiritual law into material expression. Your job is to remain faithful to the truth during this lag time. Joel taught that the lag time varies based on how deeply the old beliefs have been entrenched. A lifetime of poverty consciousness may take longer to transform than a recent health challenge. Do not judge yourself or the principle by the speed of results. Judge only by the growing sense of peace and spiritual identity within you. When that is established, the outer transformation is already underway even before you see evidence. The third obstacle is the resistance from your environment and relationships. When you begin to change, those around you may unconsciously try to pull you back to your old identity. Family members may criticize your new perspective. Friends may call you unrealistic or accuse you of spiritual bypassing. This social pressure can be intense and shake your new foundation. Joel warned that spiritual growth often requires what he called conscious separation from mass consciousness. This does not mean abandoning your relationships or responsibilities. It means developing the ability to maintain your spiritual awareness even when surrounded by limitation thinking. You love others but refuse to adopt their beliefs about who you are. Some relationships will naturally fall away as you grow. Others will transform as the people in them respond to your changed consciousness. A few rare souls will join you on the journey. All of this is natural and necessary. You cannot hold on to your old world while stepping into your new spiritual identity. Trust the process even when it feels lonely or uncomfortable. The isolation is temporary and a new community aligned with truth will emerge. The fourth challenge is the temptation to use this principle as a technique for getting what you want, rather than as a truth for knowing who you are. Your human self will try to turn being salt into a method for manifesting health, wealth, or relationships. This completely misses the point and actually blocks the very transformation you seek. You are not recognizing yourself as salt in order to heal your body or improve your finances. You are recognizing yourself as salt because it is the truth regardless of what happens in your circumstances. When your motive is pure recognition of truth rather than manipulation of results, then paradoxically the results come naturally, but they come as byproducts, not as goals. This is perhaps the subtlest and most important distinction in Joel's teaching. When you practice being salt with agenda, you reinforce the very sense of lack you are trying to overcome. When you practice being salt as pure recognition of what is already true, you rest in completion, and completion manifests as fullness in every area of life. Watch your motives carefully and return always to truth for its own sake. If these insights about overcoming obstacles speak to your spiritual journey, like this video to support others facing similar challenges. Subscribe for advanced Joel Goldsmith teachings each week, and comment telling us which obstacle you are ready to transcend right now. Let me now show you how this principle integrates into the complexity of daily life, with all its demands and distractions. You may understand that you are salt during meditation, but what happens when you face a difficult boss, a sick child, or a stack of unpaid bills? This is where the principle must become living reality, not just abstract philosophy. Joel taught that spiritual identity is not something you put on during prayer and remove when you return to practical life. You are salt in the boardroom, in the hospital, in the grocery store. The key is developing what he called continuous awareness. You learn to maintain a thread of spiritual recognition, even while handling worldly responsibilities. This becomes easier with practice. At first, you may remember your true identity only once or twice during a busy day. Gradually, you develop the ability to hold dual awareness. Your human attention handles practical matters while your spiritual awareness rests in the truth of what you are. Eventually, these two merge into one integrated consciousness that is fully present in the world but not defined by it. A practical example from my own experience illustrates this integration. I was scheduled to give a presentation to potential investors for a project that would impact many lives. The night before, I received news that our lead investor had withdrawn, putting the entire project at risk. My human reaction was panic and disappointment, but I had been practicing this principle of being salt for several years by then. I recognized the panic as a human reaction, acknowledged it, and then returned to truth. I am the salt of the earth. My spiritual identity contains all that is needed for the perfect unfoldment of this situation. I do not know how, but I trust the intelligence within my own consciousness to reveal the way. I gave the presentation the next day from this consciousness of spiritual completion, rather than human need. My words flowed with authority and peace that I could not have manufactured. 2 new investors who had not been expected emerged and committed even more resources than we had lost. The person I thought was essential was replaced by something better, because I trusted my identity as salt, rather than my human strategy. Another dimension of integration involves what Joel called the impersonal nature of truth. Many spiritual students make the mistake of thinking their problems are personal, and therefore require personal solutions. But when you understand yourself as salt, you realize that both the problem and the solution are impersonal movements of consciousness. Your financial lack is not a personal punishment or karmic debt. It is simply the outward expression of consciousness that believes in separation from infinite supply. When you recognize your spiritual identity as salt, which cannot be depleted or diminished, you address the actual cause at the level of consciousness, and the personal circumstances shift as a natural result. This impersonal understanding removes guilt, shame, and the need to figure out why problems exist. You do not need to analyze your past or your psychology. You simply need to recognize present truth. You are salt now regardless of your history. Your spiritual identity was never damaged by any human experience. This recognition is the entire healing, and everything else follows from it without effort or analysis. The advanced practice that Joel reserved for seasoned students is the recognition that you are not only salt yourself, but that all true substance is salt. Everything that truly exists, everything that is real and permanent partakes of this incorruptible, pure, preserving nature. Disease is not salt. Lack is not salt. Hatred is not salt. These are temporary appearances with no substance in spiritual reality. When you develop the ability to recognize only salt, only the spiritual reality behind all appearances, you enter what mystics call the kingdom of heaven, while still in human form. You are not denying the human experience or pretending problems do not exist. You are seeing through them to the eternal reality that outlasts all temporal conditions. This is the consciousness Jesus demonstrated when he walked on water, when he healed the sick, when he multiplied loaves and fishes. He was not performing miracles. He was seeing only spiritual reality, only salt, and the material world conformed to his vision. This same consciousness is available to you as you deepen in the recognition of your true identity. You are salt, and all true reality is salt, and nothing else has ultimate power. As we approach the culmination of this teaching, let me paint a picture of what your life looks like when this principle becomes your living reality. You wake each morning with a sense of completion rather than need. You do not begin your day trying to acquire something you lack. You begin from fullness, from the awareness that you already are the salt of the earth. Challenges still appear because you live in a human world, but they no longer define you or shake your foundation. A health issue arises and you address it practically while knowing it cannot touch your spiritual identity. A relationship ends and you feel the grief while knowing you remain complete. Money flows in cycles, but you never experience true lack because your consciousness rests in infinite abundance. People notice something different about you, though they may not be able to name it. You carry a peace that is independent of circumstances. Your words have weight because they come from depth. Your presence brings comfort to others because they unconsciously sense the spiritual reality you embody. You become a light in the world, not through effort or performance, but simply by being what you truly are. This transformation also changes your understanding of purpose and service. When you know yourself as salt, you realize that your very presence in any situation is transformative. You do not need to do great works or achieve recognition. Salt works silently, preserving and purifying simply by being present. Your consciousness, resting in truth, automatically uplifts every environment you enter. Your service to others becomes effortless because you are not trying to fix or save anyone. You simply hold the awareness of their spiritual identity as salt even when they cannot see it themselves. This silent recognition does more to help others than all the advice and assistance you could offer. You become a mirror reflecting their true nature until they recognize it themselves. Your work in the world, whatever form it takes, becomes an expression of your spiritual identity rather than a means to earn worth or security. Whether you sweep floors or lead organizations, you bring the consciousness of salt to it. The outer form matters less than the inner awareness you carry. This is how ordinary lives become extraordinary, without any change in external circumstances. Joel Goldsmith's final teaching on this principle addresses the question of what happens beyond this human experience. When you know yourself as salt, you realize that your true identity preceded your birth and will continue after your death. The body is temporary, but that which you truly are is eternal, incorruptible, and unchanging. This removes the fear of death and the desperate clinging to physical life that creates so much suffering. You cherish your human experience while knowing you are not limited to it. When the time comes to release the body, you do so with the same peace you brought to every other transition. Because you know salt cannot dissolve or disappear, only the form changes, never the essence. This understanding also transforms how you live now. You stop postponing life until conditions are perfect. You stop accumulating possessions as if they could secure you. You engage fully with each moment knowing it is both precious and temporary, while you yourself are eternal. This paradox creates a life of deep presence combined with ultimate freedom from attachment. So here we stand at the end of this journey and the beginning of your new life. You now possess the key that Joel Goldsmith discovered through decades of contemplation and practice. You are the salt of the earth not through achievement or virtue, but through your very nature as the presence of God in individual expression. This truth deeply realized changes absolutely everything. Your next step is simple but profound. Today, now in this moment, accept this truth about yourself, not as something to achieve tomorrow, but as reality now. You are salt, incorruptible, pure, preserving, complete. Let this recognition sink into every cell of your being. Let it become the foundation from which you meet every experience. Let it transform you from within until your entire life reflects this spiritual reality. The journey may be gradual with challenges and setbacks along the way, but the destination is certain because you are not becoming salt. You are recognizing what you have always been. Welcome home to your true identity. Welcome home to completion. Welcome home to the peace that surpasses all human understanding. You are the salt of the earth now and forever. If this teaching has awakened you to your true spiritual identity and transformed your understanding of who you really are, Like this video to help spread Joel Goldsmith's wisdom. Subscribe for more life-changing spiritual teachings and comment. I am the salt to declare your recognition of this eternal truth. Thanks for watching.